it is a place where the Canadian 1% lives. And so I had the experience in the election in 2015 of knocking on doors in Rosedale and saying, please vote for me, I'll increase your taxes. And I actually won't, and actually I'll cut the taxes of almost everybody else, but your taxes are going to go up. And I had a lot of very interesting conversations during the campaign, but there was one that really stuck with me, which was beautiful Rosedale house, nice seeming guy, nice guy, was like taking care of his garden. And we were talking his lawn, and he said, you know, I've done the math, and I think if you guys win, it will cost me $30,000 a year, both in terms of taxes, and then we clawed back some benefits from people at the top. And so he said, I kind of like you guys. I really like Trudeau. I sort of think you would be a better government, but like $30,000 a year, that's a lot to like pay just because I like you a little more. And what I said to him was that really it was in his self-interest to vote for us. Obviously, I'm a politician, but that the things that we were proposing were in his self-interest. Because I live in my riding, and there are really good public schools. My son, Ivan, who we were talking about, goes to Cottingham Public School just around the corner from my house. It is not a gated community. People can live there. Some of Canada's most prosperous people in what I think people from some other societies might feel was almost a 1950s or 1960s type of community. And that costs money. If we want to live in that kind of non-polarized society, in a place where we don't have to lock the gates against our neighbors because they feel, you know, because they are struggling so much and they see us doing so much better, then we do actually have to spend some money at it. And I actually really believe that for very many people in Canada, but also in other countries, that's a price worth paying. And in a way, the sort of divisive populism that you've been describing, Hugh, it's kind of proof that what I said to this nice guy in Rosedale was true. You know, that failure to do that, failure to pay what it costs to keep the middle class feeling secure, the end result maybe you'll be a little bit richer, but you are going to live in a crummy society, which is really scary for you and scary for your children. And I think we need to be prepared to make that argument. And look, like, this is a pretty prosperous group of people in this room. You know, we need to also be prepared to act on that, because it's really true. And I think spending a little bit more, paying a little bit more, so that our compatriots can be comfortable and secure is totally worth it.
Okay. I just want to, before we finish up and open up to questions, I just wanted to get into one more subject, because I think it's particularly relevant in the, on the agenda of the Centre for the Global Centre for Pluralism, which is the whole sort of rupture over immigration that we're seeing on this side of the Atlantic, as well as obviously in Europe. I think in Britain we became rather complacent that we were building a truly kind of integrated society that, you know, partly because those of us that believed that were probably spending too much time in London and not enough time outside the city. But it turns out that there are, you know, very visceral feelings about immigration at large in society at the moment. Maybe that they would be taken care of if people started to feel a little bit better off and that they had opportunities and that life was treating them better. But is there something more there, do you think, that we need to pay attention to?
I do think that part of it, a big part of it, is about politics and choices political leaders make. I think when you have a middle class that feels insecure, that is a group of people, a group of voters, who can be talked to and offered two paths. One path can be a hopeful path. This is how we can make things better. Another path can be a path of anger. This is whose fault it is. And, you know, that path of anger is a pretty tempting path for a lot of politicians to take, because it's easier to point the finger at who's to blame than it is to talk, especially to talk in sound bites, about how you make 21st century capitalism work. I mean, we've just been trying to do it. It's really complicated. Complicated issues can be hard to talk about in politics. I think they're less hard than some people think, but it is hard to do. But what we know, and what we are seeing a lot of people in the world doing effectively, is identifying a group of voters who are insecure and anxious, whipping up that anxiety and targeting it. And the easiest targets, not the only ones, but the easiest targets are someone else, are the other. The easiest target is someone whose skin is a different color from yours and who's a different religion, maybe an immigrant, or maybe a trading partner. We know those guys as targets also. So I do think politics is part of it, for sure. I also, though, in talking about pluralism in a diverse society, as a Canadian, I am always really conscious that we're just so lucky. History has generally been pretty great to Canada. One way that the combination of our geography and our very particular history has been great to Canada is it has sort of made us a country almost destined to welcome multiculturalism and diversity. Even David Goodhart, another former colleague of ours, David Goodhart, who's a former colleague of ours, is sort of the famous coiner of the phrase, the somewheres and the nowheres, right, that Theresa May used. And he was actually at my house for New Year's Day a couple of years ago. And he said to me, you know, Canada's just special. You know, you guys don't fit into my overall scheme. I think he even wrote that in a prospect essay. There was kind of like an asterisk. This applies to the whole world except Canada. And, you know, we've had some of these unique historical factors for a long time. There's a great speech by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the founding speech of the idea of multiculturalism, which he delivered in Winnipeg at a meeting, one of the annual meetings of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress. So there's even a Ukrainian-Canadian angle here. And this was this founding idea of Canada as a multicultural society. And you can read the speech today, and although Canada has changed a lot since then, it reads very true to today. And one of the things he says in that speech is, there is no such thing as sort of the archetypal, the quintessential Canadian. There's no one language that you can say a Canadian speaks, for example. And that is such a powerful and important thing about us. So I kind of want to offer a little bit of Canadian humility there. At the same time, though, I'll just say two more things on this pluralism stuff. Three more things, quickly. The fact that Canada kind of works as a diverse society, I think is really important for those of you who are not Canadian and are with us to see and tell your friends about back home. Because I think there are some people today who are arguing that it's just not possible, that there's something maybe in our genes, in our DNA as human beings, that we just can't be a successful, diverse society. And I think Canada is a really successful, diverse society. And I actually think the rising generation is even more that way than we are. I eavesdropped on a recent family walk on a hilarious conversation among my 3 children who decided that they were going to have a contest amongst themselves as to who would end up marrying the most diverse person. And they had also hilarious was their discussion of who would constitute the most diverse compared to our family, which was really sort of funny and interesting. And I swear, like, I didn't prompt them to do this or anything. It was just like their own thing between the 3 of them. And that's kind of amazing that Canadian kids are talking about stuff like that. Having said all of that, I'll say 2 more things. I do think one of the things which is really important if you want to be a society which is open to immigration, which Canada is, and I very much want us to continue to be, is people must have confidence that we control our borders. It's very important in a democracy for the citizens of that democracy to feel the choice is theirs. And again here, Canada is lucky because of our geographic position. We're proud of welcoming, now more than 50,000 Syrian refugees. It is nothing compared to what Germany has experienced, Sabine. And I do think, particularly, small L liberal politicians and governments, we have a responsibility to assure people that we understand. It's important to control our borders. David Frum recently wrote a really interesting article about immigration where he says small L liberals have to take seriously people's legitimate desire to control their borders, because if small L liberal politicians won't do the job, then people will elect fascists to do the job for them. And I think that is well put. But a final thing I'll say to you, which I really experienced traveling around Canada, is I think a lot of Canadians get the reality, which is immigration. Like, I love living in a diverse society. For me, it's also just a personal preference of the kind of world I want to be in. But there is a very hard-nosed economic virtue in being a society which is open to immigration. And Canadians really get that. I'm going to refer again to my visit to Sault Ste. Marie, where one of the things that the local Chamber of Commerce was pitching to me was, we have this sort of a pilot program which we started in Atlantic Canada to target immigrants at rural communities that need more people. And it's been so successful, it's being rolled out around the rest of the country. But not every community gets to be a community that gets more immigrants. And so they have to bid against each other. And this is actually a true fact. And the people in the Sioux were saying to me, tell Ahmed Hussein we really want to be one of the winners, and please tell him what a great place we are and how great we will be to all the immigrants he sends us. And this wasn't any politically motivated. This was the Chamber of Commerce. And they feel that that can be a real driver of economic growth.
Okay, great. Now, I think we're going to throw it open to questions. Not before time, probably.
Yes, let's have some questions, and maybe we can take a couple at a time. So, please, and there's a mic coming.
Thank you very much for a lovely conversation. My name is Urban Ahlin, the new Swedish ambassador here in Canada. And before I came here, I worked in Parliament for 24 years, a member of Parliament, and ended my career as a speaker. So I recognize the discussion, and I must say I'm really impressed by the conversation, because I think you are really spot on in lots of areas. People do feel that they are left behind. They feel that they cannot ripe the fruits from the globalization, and they can see a rich elite, running away somewhere in the horizon somewhere. But let me add one thing that I actually think politicians can do something about. Okay. And if we look upon the southern neighbor, the American dream, I do think the American people do not any longer believe in the American dream. Once upon a time, they felt I have an equal opportunity to get myself rich and, be engaged in something and be the new Gates. And nowadays they don't believe in that. Lots of people believe the system is tilted. It's not only that the market economy is very fast and produces lots of wealth. The system is tilted. I cannot ripe the fruits from this. We can see the scandal in the United States about rich Hollywood actors paying their kids' way into universities. I mean, all that creates a feeling of, the system is not fair. And I actually think politicians can do more to create equal opportunities and a more leveled playing field, in this market economy. So I would like to have some response.